Alright, what's going on, guys? As the wait for Elden Ring DLC continues on, and we eagerly wait for some news or announcements to let us know when that's gonna come, the one thing we can count on to keep us constantly entertained is that this game is rich enough and deep enough where we're always gonna be finding new things to talk about, even for years to come. And today we've got 8 more secrets and discoveries that you probably didn't know, and trust me, today's are pretty cool. But before we get into that, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because I know almost 80% of you guys that have watched every one of these videos so far has been doing so without being subscribed. And trust me guys, pressing that button supports the channel in more ways than you know. But let me blow your mind real quick. One of the strangest parts of Elden Ring's lore is destined death and the way it interacts with the world around it. It's a fundamental law of the lands between, yet can be manifested in weapons and powers wielded in a physical manner. And one of the times we see this happen is with Maliketh, who unleashes the power of destined death, changing both his form and the form of his weapon. But there's a really cool secret to Maliketh's Black Blade. Did you ever notice that it bears a striking similarity to the Dragon King's Crag Blade? Now, the two weapons are not in the same archetype, so it may not have been something you picked up on, but they have almost an identical silhouette when placed on their side, and this would have very interesting lore implications. The Dragon King's Crag Blade is gained from the remembrance of Dragon Lord Placidusax, and is said to be made of gravelstone containing the power of the primeval red lightning. Now, we talked in a previous video about how this can be inferred to be a physical part of Dragon Lord Placidusax due to it containing the power of the red lightning, but also because it has the golden scales on the blade. This is something we can also note on Maliketh's blade. In the black stone of the blade, we can see that same gold running beneath its pattern, a combination that we've only seen one time before. This same black and gold effect can be seen in the wings of Lich Dragon Fortisax, who, conveniently enough, is an ancient dragon infected by the Curse of Death. Now, to explore this idea further, we can look at the ancient dragon smithing stone, which is said to be the primary piece in crafting a god-slaying weapon. And with Maliketh residing in the home of the ancient dragons, I think it's pretty safe to say that his black blade is forged of an ancient dragon, turning into that black color when it was infused with the power of death. And I think that detail is pretty cool. Up next, we have a potential update to something that we covered in the last Discoveries video. In the game files, we can find these two strange necklaces with icons for all the jewels that seem to go into the slots on those necklaces, all of which were seemingly cut from the final version of the game. Now, I said that since we can see all the icons individually having their own files, I believe these were involved with some sort of fetch quest where you would have to go and seek out the jewels to complete the necklaces. But beyond that, I wasn't entirely sure what they could have been used for. But you guys pointed out to me some very interesting things about them, starting off with the necklace with 3 green jewels. You guys were quick to notice that it has a lot of similar imagery to the Halig tree. Specifically that the leaf patterns we can see on there are identical to those on a bewitching branch, which is of course associated with the influence of Miquella. And the blood on the jewels could be indicative of Mohg kidnapping Miquella from the Halig tree and his association with blood. But the biggest nail in the coffin for these is that these green jewels are the same that can be seen on the secret Halig tree medallion. Now, as for the gold necklace, I couldn't find anything that was definitively the same, but the gold jewels do look very similar to the iconography we can see for the Erd tree sap, and it is kind of the same color as the Dectus medallion, so I like the idea that perhaps at one point in development these would have been the way we access the grand lifts. The only problem with that is we don't have anything to match up with the rolled medallion, but let me know what you think about that down below. This next one comes from fellow content creator Limit, who makes some absolutely awesome lore videos. Definitely go check them out. But he did some investigation into a strange interaction that had a lot of people confused in their first playthroughs, me included. And this is that when you first reach the Moonlight Altar, you can see 2 different moons. Now, a lot of people chalk this up to a visual glitch, although even according to the lore, it describes Ranni as having her own dark moon. But did you know that these moons are actually 2 fully loaded assets hanging up in the sky? They're the same model, just with a little bit of different visual textures over each one. You can even clip out of bounds to reach them and see them in their full glory. But even though they are fully loaded, unfortunately you can't stand on top of them. But with a little bit of cheats, you can see where they are positioned on the map, way up in the northwest off the visible portion of the map. But it's just a really cool detail and really fascinating to see how FromSoftware achieves some of these beautiful vistas, and it's always really enlightening. But while we're on the topic of Ranni and the moons, I saw an interesting theory that I think deserves a spot in this video. A commonly held theory throughout the community of Elden Ring regarding the lore is that Ranni cast aside her great rune and placed it on the moon. This is due to a series of strange markings we can actually see on the moon's surface that sort of resemble the pattern of the Elden Ring. And while I think that theory has a lot of credibility in its own right, this one is interesting as well. If we take a close inspection at the base runes we can find throughout the world of Elden Ring, we can see that as they get stronger, they take the form of an eye. You'll also notice as you journey that certain enemies with gold overflowing from their eyes drop additional runes, so it stands to reason that runes would manifest in the eye. So if we take that idea, then perhaps great runes would follow suit. Then if we interpret the line that Ranni cast aside her great rune, would that explain why she's missing an eye? I think it's definitely worth looking into, but it does open up an entire rabbit hole of characters missing eyes, such as Melina and the statue of Marika, but even then there's room to speculate. Either way though, that is a very interesting theory. We all know the bats around the lands between that sing that creepy Latin song.
O locus ille, beatus quondum nunc diminuit, nos destinatem matribus nunc fiuntur pes.
That I'm sure got everybody off guard at least once. But if you were somebody that played the network test back in the day, you may have remembered something different. This is actually an Ainu song called Herutun Yutun. It took a while for people to figure out because the Ainu language sounds so similar to Japanese. But that was actually a really cool find that not a lot of people noticed until just recently. But something else about the Bats song known as the Song of Lament that you may not have known is that it's the only song in Elden Ring with actual Latin lyrics. Antonius Tertius has done fantastic work breaking down the music of Elden Ring and uncovering the truth about how the music was composed. Although many of the lyrics in the music of Elden Ring sound like real Latin, they're actually first generated through an AI and then adjusted to have proper vowels and pronunciation so that a vocal team can actually sing the words. He even went so far as to contact the team that made the music and confirm it with them that the lyrics were all gibberish. Now this is in line with all of FromSoftware's past games except Bloodborne, which did actually have real Latin lyrics. So if anybody's out there trying to tell you that the lyrics are real words and have meaning, they're probably making up their own words or just straight up lying to you. But it is a very interesting insight into how FromSoftware's music is made, and very cool nonetheless. Now this next one is a little bit loose, I must admit, however definitely has a lot going for it, and that is the historical basis for the fire giants. They were likely inspired by the Paiute legend of the Si Te Cah, but the Si Te Cah legend goes as follows. There were a race of red-haired giants that were at war with the Paiute natives in Nevada. Eventually the Paiutes turned the tide of the war and drove them to Lovelock Cave, where the remaining giants refused to come out. The Paiutes then blocked the entrance of the cave full of brush and set fire to it, where all of the remaining Si Te Cah died. Now I have to admit the research on this legend is very scarce, and while I can't say there's been a lot of inspiration from North American mythology, Elden Ring combines so much history all across the world, and that was pretty much the only instance of red-haired giants I could find. So it is entirely possible that this is what they're based on. But even if it's not, you got to learn a pretty cool legend. And for the final one today, we're diving into even more secrets of Godwyn's corpse. And it feels like every time we take a look at this thing, we just learn more and more and uncover even more mysteries about it. But something you may have noticed are the striking similarities between it and the basilisk, most notably in the eyes. Godwyn and the basilisk have the same eyes, but there's also some other notable similarities. The tails frill out the same on the end, they both have these thorny fins running along the arms, and looking closely on the back of the basilisk we can see small tree branches, or at least something that looks like them, which could be indicative of the death root. But something that stands out to me are the kind of greenish golden, almost seaweed looking things on the back of the basilisk. And with so many similarities in their form, could this be the parallel of Godwyn's golden hair? So is Godwyn turning into a basilisk, or are the basilisks spawning from Godwyn? I'm not sure, but I'll leave you with this. Much of the Eternal Cities can draw their historical inspiration to Greek mythology and architecture, and the Greek etymology for basilisk refers to a little prince. And with Godwyn being the golden prince of Marika, I think that checks out pretty well. But guys, that's gonna pretty much do it for the video today. I hope you enjoyed. Now that we're this far from the game's release, I'm trying to focus on the discoveries that are kind of outside of the box. There's almost none of those like techie gameplay discoveries left to find, if I'm being honest. And I know some people really like those, but I only can work with what you guys give me and what actually exists. I know there's other channels kind of covering those out there, but most of the gameplay discoveries are things everybody already knows, and my goal with these is to try to blow your mind. So I hope you found these interesting, and if you did, be sure to leave a like on the video. Make sure you're subscribed if you've been enjoying this series so far. We're getting pretty close to 60K, and that is just unbelievable. But with all that, I'll catch you in the next one.